Hello everybody and welcome to another A+ 1101 practice quiz where I'm going to give you a question from every single exam objective. We're going to go through why the right answer is right, and I'm going to talk about pretty much what you need to know when it comes to the specific questions that I'm asking and the specific exam objectives that they're coming from. So it'll be a good way to see how you're going, and if you're ready for the exam, it'll be a good way to close some of those knowledge gaps that you might have, and more importantly, it'll be a good thing to listen to while you're in the car on a drive to the gym, to work, maybe you're going to meditate. Wherever you're going, follow along and level up your A+ 1101 knowledge and get one step closer to passing that exam. Let's get to it right about now. A+ 1101 quiz, question number 1. You have just used a wireless technology to create a pan by connecting your phone to your headphones. What is the name of this technology? A. Bluejacking. B. Bluetooth. C. 802.11x, or D. NIC-enabled play. Your answer coming up in about 2 seconds. Pause the video if you need some time. The answer for that one is B. Bluetooth. So when it comes to Bluetooth, or when it comes to this question, we're going to go through pretty much what every one of the options here where that's relevant to the exam. So first of all, the answer was Bluetooth. So Bluetooth is essentially the wireless connection method that you generally use whenever you're connecting any device to wireless peripherals. So that could be headphones, and that's why I have this photo of this guy here. He is so ecstatically happy because he has wirelessly connected to his headphones. He can dance freely without worrying about the wire getting caught up, and then the music pops out and then everyone can hear that he's listening to Britney Spears. It helps him have a personal wireless experience. So that brings me to the next key point, which is Bluetooth creates what's called a personal area network, or a PAN. So when I think about that, I think about Bluetooth generally connects things in your very close personal space. So I connect my headphones to listen to my laptop, which is really not that far away from me. And that's a personal space bubble. You're not allowed in my personal space. If I'm connecting through Bluetooth, you need to get out of my personal space. Don't enter my personal Bluetooth space bubble, because that's my personal area network, or my PAN. So hopefully that made sense. Another option there was 802.11, and that is basically the standard, or the series of standards for wireless internet technology. So you got 802.11 A, B, G, N, A, C, A, X. I'm pretty sure those are the ones off the top of my head. And they all have different speeds. They all use different frequencies. Some use combination of different frequencies. I'm not going to get into the specifics of that now. I have in previous quiz videos, so if you want to check those out, you can. But you just need to know, for the sake of this one, 802.11 ABGN, AC, or AX, could be any of those, is basically referring to wireless internet, right? So if you're asked about wirelessly connecting to the network, which one of these technologies is used here, the answer is probably going to be 802.11. If the question starts to ask you about which 802.11 standard should you use to get X speed, or to achieve a particular goal based on a scenario, that's when you're going to need to look into the specific speeds and frequencies used by each standard, and that's when we need to get a bit more specific. That's not going to be in this video, but I have covered it previously. You can also find it at my learning guide at journeytocyber.com if you're interested. But hey, I'm not here to plug myself. I'm here to help you out for free. So let's get to the next option. Another option there was NIC-enabled play, and that's something I just made up, but the NIC is relevant to the exam. That's referring to the network interface card, and essentially this is a card that is in your device that allows you to connect to the internet. Now, there is a physical NIC, which allows you to connect to the wired network, and there's also a wireless NIC, which allows you to connect to the wireless network. So you need one for each, one for the wired, one for the wireless. It doesn't do both. And an example of that is right here. You can see this is an example of connecting to a wired Ethernet network, and you need a NIC to be able to do this, a network interface card. In essence, it allows you to it provides an interface where you can connect with the network. So, right, you got your interface here, you plug your Ethernet cable in, and you're good to go. If you don't have a NIC, then you don't have a way to connect to the internet. So that brings me to the exam objective that is from, and that's from 1.3, which is given a scenario, set up and configure accessories and ports of mobile devices. So it's talking about Bluetooth here, so you need to know what Bluetooth is. And you can see a wide variety of other things you're also going to need to know about. Now, those other options weren't necessarily from this exam objective, but you do need to know what they are because they do pop up in other exam objectives. I just figured I'd explain them here for the sake of it, so it just gives us the ability to kill 4 birds with 1 stone, I guess. Don't throw rocks at birds. That's cruelty. That's animal cruelty. Okay, it's also from exam objective 1.4, which is down here. As you can see, we need to be able to configure basic mobile device network connectivity and application support, and you need to know how to enable Bluetooth, enable pairing, basically how to connect a device with Bluetooth. If you can go grab your phone right now and try to do that, you can walk yourself through the steps, watch a YouTube tutorial if you need to. It's pretty intuitive. You shouldn't really have any trouble with that if you've just attempted to connect to a Bluetooth device before. You know what you're doing, right? So that's a pretty easy one. We'll move on to the next question, which is from exam objective 2, and that reads, as a network engineer managing various network types, you need to differentiate between the distinct categories of networks that devices are connected to. Which network type encompasses devices directly connected to your local network and situated on your side of the router? A. LAN, B. WAN, C. PAN, D. MAN, E. SAN, or F. WLAN. Your answer coming up. I said a lot of options, I know. In about 2 seconds, pause the video if you need more time. The answer is A. LAN, or local area network. So we'll go through what all of these are, and then you'll pretty much have a good overview of each of these options, and you'll need to know all of these for your exam. But they're pretty intuitive, not intuitive maybe, but they're pretty simple to get your head around, I suppose. So the first one is LAN, local area network. Essentially, as outlined here, this is anything on your side of the router. So if you're in your house and you are connected to the internet, any of your devices that are connected to the internet all go to your router. And from there, your router sends them out into the internet outside of your house. So when I say anything on your side of the router, I mean your devices connect to the router, and then your router connects those devices to the internet out there. So your router is basically the separating line. So if you're in your house on your devices, you're basically connected to your LAN. And only when you send a packet to your router and your router redirects that, does that then leave your local area network. Now, that's local area network. There's another specific terminology for that. So LAN, local area network, is basically talking about what I just described, but it's wired, right? And the other one is WLAN, which is basically a LAN, but it's wireless. Now, realistically, you'll often have some devices connected with wires, some devices connected without wires. For the purpose of this exam, if it really specifies the wireless aspect, it's safe to go with the WLAN, the wireless LAN. But in terms of this particular question, the question said, you need to differentiate between the distinct. It said, which network type encompasses devices directly connected to your local network? So there's no specific mention of wireless capabilities there, and it actually used the word directly connected. So that, if anything, implies a direct wired connection. It's not overt, but as a general rule, if you're not sure, and on the exam you probably won't get both of these options next to each other unless wireless is really, really emphasized and they're making it obvious, because otherwise it's a bit tricky. But if it doesn't specifically mention and emphasize the wireless capabilities, the LAN would be the one to go with. But like I said, you're probably not going to get those both next to each other unless it does specify that it's only wired or it's only wireless, because that's the distinguishing factor. They're both the same thing, but this one is wireless. That's really it. So as for the other options, you've got wide area network. So that's basically how I said the LAN was everything on your side of the router. The wide area network is basically everything on the other side of the router. So you might start at your laptop, send a packet to your router. Your router will then send that out. That's going to the wide area network. It's a network that spans over a wide area. And basically the internet is one big wide area network. It spans the entire world, right? So if it's leaving your router, it's going to the wide area network, essentially, for the most part. So spans across the world. It goes over a wide area. Basically, it's the internet, essentially speaking. Now, another one was a personal area network. Now, I think we covered this in the first question, if I remember correctly. It's basically your own personal network. Remember, we talked about personal space. If you connect any of your personal devices together through Bluetooth, generally it's going to be through Bluetooth, wireless headphones, wireless mouse, anything to that effect, that's a PAN, a personal area network. And I always remember that one by thinking, hey, get out of my personal area space, or I'm going to smack you with a pan, a frying pan right to the face. So that's my trick to remember that one. Or you can just like memorize the content. Either one of those strategies is up to you, however you want to do it. Okay, you also have a metropolitan area network. Now this is essentially when you have a company that has more than one site within a metropolitan area, and they want to have a high-speed internet connection or data connection between those sites. They might set up a metropolitan area network. So obviously it's super expensive, but if they're large companies, they're going to be able to afford that, and it might be worth the cost for them. Only people who are authorized to use that can use it. It's only for those companies to use. You can't tap into a metropolitan area network because they're paying a lot of money for that. That's not for you to use. And even if you could use it, you probably don't have any purpose to try to connect to these buildings anyway, unless you're trying to hack in which case, don't hack. We're trying to stop the hackers, man. That's why you're doing these certificates. You're trying to be a white hat, a good boy, not a bad boy. We're not trying to be black hats. We're trying to be white hats. Not black cats. There's nothing wrong with black cats. Cats are great. Black cats get a bad rap, but they're all right. Okay. Moving on from that topic, we also have a storage area network, which is basically a high-speed network that allows you to communicate directly to a large storage facility. So you're connecting to a storage facility over the network. That's a SAN, right? So that's pretty self-explanatory. No more needs to be said there. And then we talked about the WLAN as well. So that comes from exam objective 2.7, which is compare and contrast internet connection types, network types, and their features. And we basically covered all of these. So long as you can talk about what each of these are and when you would use each of these and verbally describe what these are to someone else in a way that makes sense and you're confident doing, you should be fine. What is a LAN, WAN, PAN, MAN, SAN, WLAN, WLAN, however you want to say that, right? So we covered all that in that question. Now, head on to objective number 3. The question reads, you are setting up a printing solution for a business that needs to print multiple copies of invoices with carbon copies. The printed content should be legible on both the original and the carbon copies. Which type of printer would be the most suitable choice for this scenario? A, laser printer, B, impact printer, C, thermal printer, D, 3D printer, or E, inkjet printer. Answer coming up in about 1 second. Pause the video if you need. Your answer is B, impact printer. So we're going to go through the different types of printers now. It'll be a broad overview, not super in-depth, but I'm thinking I might do a fully in-depth printer video later that covers everything, because printers pop up a lot, and I think it's one of the things that I struggled most with. And I was like, why are there so many printer questions? Who needs to know this much about printers? I'm trying to do this to get into hacking, not to be a printer technician, but hey, we got to do what we got to do. Okay, so the impact printer, which was the correct answer to this one. Essentially, what it is you have a ribbon that's full of ink, and there is an impact that is pressing that ink into the paper that's being printed upon, right? It's very loud, it's very noisy, and you can actually layer the paper behind one another to create what they described, a carbon copy. Because that impact is so hard, it's actually going through to the paper on the other side. So as you can imagine, that constant impact is going to be very loud, very noisy. If you're going to be using this, you're going to need like a soundproof room or somewhere that's not going to disturb other people who are trying to focus and study, like people probably are in this house right now while I'm screaming about printers. Okay, so you've got your primary components, your print head, which is moving back and forth across the paper and stamped into the ribbon itself. You've got the ribbon, so sorry, the ink is in the print head, and then that's stamping into the ribbon, and the ribbon is applying that ink. And the ribbon is full of ink, right? And it's pressed onto the page by the print head. So there's that impact, and then you've got the tractor feed, which is pulling that paper through. Those are the components that you need to know about for your exam. Of course, there's more itty-bitty components, but that's what you need to know about, those 3. So that being said, there's also a laser printer. So the laser printer has a few key components, but essentially you can read over the key components there, but you've got a laser, which is through by using positive and negative charges, what the printer does is a laser draws the image onto the imaging drum, and toner is applied to the drum that's transferred onto paper, and then a fuser, really hot, is fusing the toner. In a laser printer, it's not necessarily called ink, it's called toner, specifically is the term. Toner in a laser printer, and that is fused onto there with heat, and that's how the image gets stuck to the page. Right, so that's a laser printer, because they use a laser to charge that imaging drum. Okay, we also have an inkjet. This is the one that I'm most familiar with in my day-to-day life. You have to go and buy the little components and take them out and replace them, and it's like, oh my god, they're so expensive. That's the inkjet printer, right? So you've got the ink cartridges. This is where we refer to it as ink. You've got the print head. You've got a feeder roller that feeds the paper through. But essentially, just when you think of inkjet, think about these little ink cartridges. That's going to be one of the primary distinguishing factors. There's no lasers. There's nothing fancy like that. You're using ink cartridges in the printer. Okay, you've got some detail about the components and the maintenance there, but that's a broad overview there for you. And finally, a thermal printer is a printer that you print your receipts on generally, right? And the paper is particularly heat sensitive. So you've got a heating element in there that is heating specific parts of the paper, which the heat then turns those parts of the paper black, which is how you get that receipt. And if you leave that heat sensitive paper out in the sun, the whole thing will actually turn black. So that's why it's really important to not leave your receipts in the sun, and ideally keep a digital record. Take a photo, right? Keep a digital record, because eventually the heat will get to them and they'll be illegible. So that being said, the actual final one is going to be a 3D printer, and you've got two types that you need to know about. Filament printing, which is the one over on the right here, which is where the filament is melted onto it one layer at a time. So it's building from the bottom up. So it's standing on the platform, and the filament is being melted one layer at a time. The other type is a resin printer, which is where it's actually hung upside down, and there's a liquid pool of resin on the bottom. It's dipped down, and the laser heats the specific area of the resin to harden it, and that's how that happens, right? That's how it occurs. So there is that slight difference. Just understand that filament printing, it's dropped and melted one layer at a time. Resin printing, it's actually hanging from the platform, being dropped, lowered down, and melted on upside down. That's the primary difference there, that liquid, right? You just need to know what the print bed is, the difference between resin and filament, which I just went through with you there. That being said, that was from Objective 3.7. So knowing the different components of those different printers is just what I roughly ran you through there. But we will need to go through that in more detail at a later date. But in the sense of keeping this snappy, we're going to move on. Okay, now's a great time for a word from today's sponsor. Yeah, I'll let him talk to you. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get to the next question. The next question from Exam Objective 4 reads, John manages an IT infrastructure that includes legacy software requiring an older operating system that is no longer supported. He needs to ensure the software can still be used by his team. What should John do in order to ensure his team can still use the legacy software? A. Purchase an older machine from eBay. B. Implement virtual machines. C. If the OS is no longer supported, John's team cannot effectively use the software. Or D. Manually upgrade the system to a sandbox. Your answer coming in about 1 second. If you need more time, please hit that pause button. Okay, 3, 2, 1. That's more than 1 second. Here we go. The correct answer is B, implement virtual machines. So for this one, you basically need to understand what you can use virtual machines for. What are their purpose? When can you use them? And when is it just inappropriate to use them? When is it not a good idea or just not applicable? So virtual machines can be used for multiple purposes. And the first one is what was applicable in this particular question. Legacy software or operating system. So you can essentially install a virtual machine and on that virtual machine have legacy software, and you can, which is like really old operating system. And that way you can have that old operating system running virtually on your machine, and you can trick the software into thinking it's being installed onto an old operating system, which I guess technically it is, but through virtualization. And then that way you can use that old software on your current new modern device. You've just got to do it on that virtual machine layer. And you can then be as happy as this guy over here, which is a beautiful AI generated image. Okay, So you can also use it as a sandbox, and look how happy she is in the sandpit. That's what you will look like when you use Sandbox through virtual machines. Now, you can experiment with software or test risky programs or code in a safe environment. So when you think about a sandbox, that's like a safe space, right? If something explodes or blows up, it's not leaving that sandbox. If someone throws sand at you, it doesn't hurt. It's a bit annoying. It's like, oh man, but you can just kind of put all the sand back in and reset the system. And you can do the same thing with a virtual machine sandbox environment. If you need to test some code out, put it in a virtual machine as a sandbox. Maybe the code breaks everything. You can just say, oh man, I'll reinstall the virtual machine, I'll set it up again, and we'll try to fix the code so that doesn't happen. And then your primary operating environment is not impacted by that. Now, look, here it says you can test risky programs. Don't be fooled. Virtual machines are not immune to viruses, and there is such a thing as virtual machine escape, which is where the virus essentially escapes the virtual machine and does find it onto your actual system. For the scope of this exam, you don't need to worry about that. What you need to really worry about is just understanding the concept that using virtual machines as a sandbox is like a safe space to test code and do that kind of thing. So you can also use it for test development, right? So you can use virtual machines to create realistic testing environments for your software, which is kind of what I was talking about with testing the code. Maybe you want to implement it wide scale, but first you want to create a virtual machine that replicates what your machines look like in your office. Test it there to see if it's actually going to work. That way, if something gets messed up, you're not actually testing it on a machine, and then you don't have to actually fix that machine back up. You can set up virtual machines with different operating systems or configurations and ensure the applications work across those various conditions, right? So you can create multiple different virtual machines and test that same software across all of them, and that saves you the trouble of saying, okay, I have to go down to JB Hi-Fi, talk to Mark, and I don't like Mark because he's always trying to get me to buy season 6 of Friends, and I swear to God, I always tell him I just want one USB stick, and I walk out with all seasons of Friends, and I'm sick of it. It happens every time. You don't have to worry about dealing with Mark. You can just create a virtual machine and do it yourself. So that's one of the pros of doing that, right? So that's another way you can use virtual machines. Now, we also had cross-platform virtualization. That's the same concept as the legacy rationale, trying to use older software by tricking it with installing a virtual machine and then putting that old OS on there. If you want to use a Mac program, but you have a Windows machine, you can install a virtual machine with Mac OS, and then that way you can use the Mac program on your virtual machine, but you're actually using it on your Windows device. So if you go to Windows, you want to use a Mac program, install a Mac virtual machine on your device, or vice versa, right? That's the basic concept. So that's from exam objective 4.2, and we pretty much went through all of that there. So we've got one more to go. Let's go ahead and smash this out, and then you can go ahead and go eat your dinner or do whatever you're going to do after this. The question for exam objective 5 reads, Veronica has just completed documenting the results of a troubleshooting ticket. What should her next step be? A, identify the problem. B, test the theory. C, she does not need to do anything, she is finished. Or D, establish a plan of action. Pause the video if you need some more time. Your answer coming up right about now. The answer is C. She doesn't need to do anything. She is finished. And for this one, you essentially need to just understand the CompTIA troubleshooting process that CompTIA has laid out for you to understand for the exam. So step 1, you're identifying the problem. You're asking any questions. You're asking a lot of questions, trying to get as much information as you can. A key question you want to ask is if anything has changed in the environment recently. That's going to be like the number one question. Has anything changed recently that can help you pinpoint what the cause is? Then based on that information, you establish a theory. You then test the theory. You then establish a plan of how you're going to actually put that action that you've now confirmed from testing the theory into place to permanently fix the issue. Not always necessary, but for the sake of this, that's the next step. Then once you've implemented that, you're going to verify full system functionality and make sure everything works properly. It works, fantastic. You'll document everything, and then that's it. You're done. So an easy way to remember this that I used when I took my exam was a mnemonic, which is, I enjoy taking everyone's internet very diligently. And I had this image of my head. I'd sneak into the office and I'd steal people's internet by hacking into their system, and I'd take all of their internet. I don't know. It helped me out. So I, which is identify, enjoy, which is establish, theory, taking, which is test, everyone's internet, establish, plan and implement, vary, verify, diligently document. That's the trick I use. So look, if you found this video useful, please go ahead and head over to journeytocyber.com. I've got, as stated here, the only products you will need to pass your A+ exam. Of course, you can do this entire exam with free resources. The problem with that is, you know, you've got some videos over here which kind of cover it, but it's pretty shallow. And then you've got some detailed videos over here, but they cover the exam objectives in like a weird order, and you've got to try to collect everything together. What I've done, I have my learning guide, my 5 practice exams, and my performance-based question simulations. And across all of these, I essentially give you notes, practice questions, learning activities to do, and I break it down not only by exam objective, but by each dot point within that exam objective, and by every single topic in that exam objective. So you know exactly what you're studying. You can easily identify your weak points. You can get simulated exam experiences, everything you need to be confident for the exam. So look, that's all there for you. Head over to journeytocyber.com and you can see people are leaving really positive reviews over there as well. They're finding it really, really useful. So with that being said, I'll just clarify that last question was from exam objective 5.1, which is just on screen here. As you can see, it's just the order of the troubleshooting process. So, okay, now that being said, I'll leave you to it. Good luck on your exam. I hope to see you at journeytocyber.com. And if I don't, I'll see you in the next video. And hopefully I'll see you in my 1102 video series after you pass this exam, which I'm sure you will on your first and or next attempt, whichever one comes after this video. Okay, bye guys.